Number 1, what is your name, please?
My name is Jeffrey Zaslow.
Number 2.
Jeffrey Zaslow.
Number 3.
My name is Jeffrey Zaslow.
Only one of these people is the real Jeffrey Zaslow, and is the only one sworn to tell the truth. Now, let's meet our panel. Co-star of Murder, She Wrote, Ron Masak. Emmy Award-winning actress and producer, Polly Bergen. Film and television producer, David Niven, Jr. And to tell the truth's very own, Kitty Carlisle. Here's the host of To Tell the Truth, Gordon Elliott.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good morning and welcome. And Polly, you know, you said something yesterday in the show, Polly, and I'm fascinated. What did you mean? You said, oh, you looked married. You said one of the contestants looked married. What
Oh, the guy
look?
who was on the show who looked married?
Yeah.
Well, he looked tired, beat up, available, all those things. I mean, I thought it was absolutely obvious to me. Wasn't it to you, gentlemen?
No, that's a newlywed you just described.
Okay, let's move along. This is the first story presented by our team of challengers, all three of whom claim to be Jeffrey Zaslow. I, Jeffrey Zaslow, replaced the famous advice columnist Ann Landers. When Ann Landers defected from the Chicago Sun-Times, they ran a Replace Ann contest, and 12,000 people applied to fill her shoes. Despite some offbeat ideas in my contest application, I won. I became the first man ever admitted into the world of lonely hearts. Now I receive thousands of letters a week, and my column, All That Zazz, is carried in 50 newspapers. I've been described as off the wall and on the mark. I even make house calls, accepting a reader's dinner invitation to talk over problems in exchange for a good home-cooked meal. If you're lovelorn in Duluth or henpecked in Hoboken, drop me a line, signed Jeffrey Zaslow. Welcome, Zaslow 3, and we'll find out more about all this Zazz right after this break. Welcome back to the Tell the Truth. All right, panel, these three people all claim to be Jeffrey Zaslow, the man who replaced Ann Landers, the advice columnist. Let's start the questioning with Kitty Carlisle.
Thank
Kitty.
you. Number 1, are you a trained psychologist?
No, I'm not.
Number 2, do you feel responsible for any of this advice you give in case it's bad, wrong, maybe hurts people's lives?
No, I can't. I'm not going to give advice that's going to, in some way, lead them away from, say, therapy or counseling. So I wouldn't go that far.
Thank you. Number 3, what is Ann Landers' real name?
Epi Letterer.
Thank you. Number 1, where does she do her column now?
She's at the Trib in Chicago.
And number 2, what is the most extraordinary thing that you feel you've really been helpful in?
I get a lot of letters from unwed mothers, and I do a lot of that kind of answering.
Counseling.
Yes.
And what do you...
Moving along now to David Niven, Jr.
Thank you. Number 1, what were your qualifications for this job?
Well, I was a freelance writer at a paper in New York called Newsday. And basically, I entered the contest as a kick, to tell you the truth. I wanted to write an article for my paper, Newsday, on the contest. And I ended up winning the contest.
Okay, number 2, what was one of your offbeat ideas that enabled you to win this contest?
The regular Joe concept. Taxi cab drivers, waitresses, bartenders, all named Joe, or Josephine, or Joanne. And they're my advisors. My advisors are not experts. They're not doctors and lawyers and psychologists. Okay. They're regular people.
Thank you. Number 3, you're described as off the wall. In what way are you described as? What does that mean exactly?
Well, first of all, I make house calls. People invite me to dinner, and they tell me what's for dinner. If it's a good meal and they have an interesting problem that'll make a good column, I go to their house. I'll also give advice to celebrities all the time. I give advice to Elvis in heaven, or to... I've gone to a reform school reunion for women who are now in their 70s and in reform school in their 30s and 40s.
Okay, thank you.
A little twisted, I suggest. Polly.
Yes, number 3. Ann Landers has a very famous sister. What is her sister's name?
Her sister's name is Pauline Friedman, but it's Dear Abby.
Number 2, what is Ann Landers' sister's name? Number 1, what is Ann Landers' sister's name?
Abigail Van Buren.
Number 2, who was the editor of the Sun-Times at the time you went to work for it?
Joshua Hawthorne when I went to work.
I see. When did you go to work for the Sun-Times, number 3?
In June of '87.
And who was the editor of that time?
Matt Storing.
Number 1,
Oh, these are all inside questions, Polly. Very clever
I
of
got
you.
a cheat once in a while.
You are
and-
asking some very difficult questions.
I know.
Ron.
I didn't learn anything, so...
Neither did
there.
I. Good. Because it's so inside, I wasn't sure. Number 1, it said you made house calls. What was the most interesting house call dinner you had?
Actually, I'm dating someone who I met a house call to. That's the most interesting.
Does she write to your column for advice?
She did. That's how I met her. Actually, the most interesting was a family who was deaf, and their dog did tricks to sign language. That was pretty wild.
Number 2, there's a very, very famous column that runs in the Sun-Times. It's been running longer than anyone in the United States. You know whose column that would be?
I do my column from Steamboat Springs, Colorado. I'm in Chicago about once a month. I don't read the Sun-Times.
My kind of guy.
Okay, let's wind it up. Time to vote for either number 1, number 2, or number 3. Our team of challengers will receive $500 for each incorrect vote with a guarantee of $1,000. And if the panel is filled completely, the team of challengers win $3,000. Panel, are you ready to cast your ballots? We'll begin with Kitty.
Well, I don't think any of them the real one. But number 1 gave us a lot of very good information. Number 3 is consulting with Mr. Presley in heaven. I doubt that. I don't think that number 3 is doing his column from any place except Chicago, but I voted for him anyway.
Okay. David Niven Jr.
Well, I don't know a lot about various different editors. However, it sounded to me as though number 1 at least knew Abigail's last name correctly, so...
Came down to a fine hair of detail.
Well, that's appropriate sometimes.
Polly?
Well, I didn't know the editor either, but I thought maybe they could give me some information, you know. I voted actually for...
You didn't know the answer to those questions?
Well, I knew the answer many years ago when I was very young, obviously before these 3 gentlemen were born, and
Right.
I hoped that one of them would turn up with a familiar name, and they didn't, and I know I shouldn't ask those kind of... Excuse me, wake up. Number 1 was the only one who knew Ann Landers' sister's real name, so I voted for Ann Landers.
Okay.
No, I voted for number 1.
Ron.
Well, I eliminated number 3 because I thought he gave the wrong answer on Abigail's twin sister. And number 2, I can't believe anybody would write a column and not at least read it once and not know that Irv Kupcinet is the most famous columnist probably in America. So I went along with number 1.
Okay. 3 votes for number 1, as you can see. 1 vote for number 2. Number 3, I'm sorry, not looking too good at all, is it? Let's find out who the real sub-brother is. Will the real Jeffrey Zaslow please stand up? I love it. I love it.
I'll tell Cup you said hello. I'll tell Cup you said hello, Irv Cup.
Please do, thank you.
Okay. Now, what is the name of Dear Abby's sister?
I got it right. It's Popo Friedman. Pauline Friedman is Dear Abby. And Epi Letterer is Ann Landers.
You mean number 1 was lying to us yet again?
Number 1, what is Dear Abby? But yeah, I got the real name right.
See, that makes sense.
There you go. There you go. Okay, well, let's come back to number 1. What is your real name? What do you do?
My name is Richard Hochberg. I live in Los Angeles, and I deliver singing telegrams.
Number 2. What is your real name and occupation?
My name is Judd Morris, and I'm a criminal court judge.
Oh, no, really? Well, you've successfully stumped our panel, so your team will receive $3,000. And thanks for being with us today on To Tell the Truth. And we'll be back with a woman who died 13 years ago, right after this. Very good. Welcome back to Tell the Truth. Let's meet our next team of challengers.
Number 1, what is your name, please?
My name is Diane Morrissey.
Number 2.
My name is Diane Morrissey.
Number 3.
My name is Diane Morrissey.
All right, panel, it's up to you now to locate the real Diane Morrissey, and this is her story. Please read along with me. I, Diane Morrissey, died 13 years ago. That day, 110 volts of electricity suddenly shot through me. I fell to the floor unconscious and stopped breathing. My soul left my body, and I was drawn through a tunnel toward a bright light on the other side. I knew that if I went to the light, I'd be dead. Suddenly, a woman appeared and she helped me decide to come back to my body. Up until that time, I had been a total non-believer in the supernatural. But since my near-death experience, strange things have happened. I'm not only able sometimes to predict the future, but I've located a missing person, seen ghosts and auras, and even investigated a house haunted by a dog. Signed, Diane Morrissey. Welcome, you ethereal things, you. Come and have a seat. Now, let's start the questioning on this one with Ron Masak.
Very frightening. Welcome back, whoever you are. That day, the 110 volts, what happened, number 3? How did you get electrocuted?
It was really a rather stupid accident. I did what your mother always tells you not to do, stick a knife in a toaster, and there was water on the floor because a water pipe had broken from my dishwasher.
Number 1, it said your soul left your body. What would that describe that? What did that feel like?
It was a sensation more than a feeling of my actual spirit leaving the body, so that you couldn't actually feel it, but you could actually sense the separation. Number 2, did you in that form see your body, see your soul leaving your body?
I didn't see it leaving the body. It was more like seeing my physical body leave me.
Number 3.
Moving along now to Polly Bergen.
Number 2, did you recognize the woman who guided you back?
No, I don't know who she is. I have no idea, but she loved me a great deal.
Number 1, did you see any other people when you were headed toward the light?
No, I didn't.
Number 3, it says that you have been able to predict the future. Can you name something you have been able to predict accurately?
Yes, I can. I don't know what help that would be. I've predicted car accidents and not necessarily avoided them, but the car accident was less than what it probably would have been.
Number 1, could you tell me about the dog?
Couldn't give me the winner of the Triple Crown, could you, before we go? Okay. David Newman Jr.
I thought you were going to ask about cricket or something.
Yeah.
Number 1, where did you see a ghost?
I saw a ghost at a friend's house. I was sent by recommendation, and they were plagued by a spirit that was in a closet. So I went and I saw it, and I validated what they saw.
Thank you. Number 2, this mysterious dog that haunted people, what breed of dog was this?
It sort of looked like a poodle and a cocker spaniel. It had long, whitish hair and hopped in the air and would disappear.
So it wasn't sort of like the sort of Hounds of the Baskervilles or something like that?
No.
No, okay, just checking.
Kitty.
Number 1, when did you discover after this accident and sort of rebirth that you had these powers? What was the first thing that happened?
When I was in the hospital, oddly enough, and I was being discharged, the first thing I noticed was that I saw colors around the people as I was leaving.
Number 2, isn't it quite often the people who are very near death see that kind of lighted tunnel?
Some people do see the light, not everyone though, and
Thank you.
I did.
Number 3, have you ever exorcised any ghosts? Have you helped people get rid of ghosts?
I did in 2 cases. I did.
What happened?
Well, it's just sort of a convulsion and almost a slight blacking out and a shimmering leaving the body and the person coming back to consciousness.
Time's up, panel. Time to vote for either. Thank you, Ron. To vote for either number 1, number 2, or number 3. Panel, if you're ready to cast your ballots. Ron, for whom did you vote?
Well, number 1 gave me this wonderful story about sticking the knife in the toaster. And I said to myself, she's giving me a little too much information.
Particularly because it was number 3 and not number 1.
That's what I meant. Thank you very much, Polly. I needed your help. If I want to be yelled at, I'll stay home. I've got a wife and 6 children who can do that if they feel like it. No. Number 3 said that. Number 1 said she went to a friend's house, but she was sent there by recommendation. And so I just went along, and I liked number 2's answer when she said that she didn't recognize the lady, but it was someone who loved her. I like that, so I voted for number 2.
Moving along, Polly Bergen, your thoughts?
Well, I've always found this very fascinating because I've read many stories about the tunnel and the light and the other side, and you know, I think that's something we all would very much like to believe in, and I would very, very seriously like to believe that number 2 is the correct answer.
David.
I'm confused, but then I haven't been right all week, so it doesn't make the slightest bit of difference. I'm sure
you've
you're
got
not
no reputation to uphold.
I'm sorry about that. I'm voting for number 3 for the simple reason that number 3 seemed to nod or make facial expressions when other people were answering questions.
But that threw you last
I know, I
week.
get thrown all the time.
She gets thrown all the time, don't worry.
I'm not terribly bright this week, sorry.
Kitty's always very good. Your thoughts?
I envy all three of them because it's a lovely experience, whoever has had it, and it does give us hope. Polly's right. We all hope for that kind of experience when the time comes, without fear. And, but I like the number two's answer about the lady who loved her very much. So
Okay. Well, there you go. As you can see, no votes for number one. Obviously, it'll be her. It's obviously going to be her. 3 votes for number 2, 1 vote for number 3. Now let's find out which one was really dead and which 2 are only playing possum. Will the real Diane Morrissey please stand up? It was. Congratulations, guys. And David,
I'm sorry.
you've got to go with the flow sometimes. Well, can I ask you, do you sense any ghosts in the studio right now, Diane?
Not now, but I'm sure you might have one following you around.
Maybe. And none of the panel have any auras. Can you read any of their auras?
I see auras all the time since I died, around everything and everybody.
Well, what about, is David's aura any different to anyone else's in the studio?
Is it kind of a dumber or?
Yeah, really stupid. Don't start on me. I don't recommend that.
Is there...
What color is Polly?
What color is she? She has a little yellow on the left side of her and a little blue on the upper right.
Well, there you go. Here, a quick reading. Now, let's find out who our imposters really are. Number 1, what's your real name and occupation?
My name is Ariel Hart, and I'm a creative director for the Romanian Orphanage Fund.
Oh, good on you. Number 3, 1 vote. I would have voted for you. Your jewelry looked like you were the one.
I know. I tried.
What's your real name and occupation?
Marie Foyer, and I teach English as a second language.
Okay. Well, 1 incorrect vote, so your team receives the $1,000 guarantee. Thank you for playing To Tell the Truth with us today. And we'll be back to play one-on-one with someone from our studio audience right after this. We're back. You're watching To Tell the Truth, and now it's time to play one-on-one with someone from our studio audience. Burton, who do you have for us today?
Well, Gordon, today I'd like you to meet Betty Richardson, no relation, from Birmingham, Alabama.
Hello, Betty. Betty from Birmingham. Here's your chance to play one-on-one. And I want you to meet a gentleman who has 2 stories to tell you, Paul Wilson. Welcome, Paul. Now, Paul is going to tell you 2 stories, Betty, only one of which is the truth. If you can spot that true story, you'll win $500. Paul, what's your first story?
I'm good with needle and thread. I won the 4-H Club State Sewing Championship. I made the suit I'm wearing.
Now, that may or may not be the truth, Betty, so let's listen to Paul's second story.
This past June, I was the one and only member of my 1990 high school graduating class.
Now, panel, to help Betty win that $500, you'll ask 1 question about each of those stories. Let's start with story number 1, that of the sewing proficiency, and Kitty.
Thank you. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Who taught you to sew?
My first year sewing was with Joan Scornia. She's a 4-H leader. And then for my past 4 years, my mom has been teaching me.
David?
What is that suit made of?
It's 100% wool.
Polly?
There's a preliminary stitch that you use when you're first putting the fabric together. What's that called?
A basting stitch.
Ron?
Did you make that suit on a dummy, or did you have a model, or?
Well, unless I'm a dummy, I didn't use a dummy.
I didn't want to say anything, Paul. You're a very nice young man. Okay, now you've heard Paul's first story. Now story number 2, that of the graduate at high school, the only one. Kitty again.
Why?
Why? I live in the middle of nowhere, and there's only about 30 people in our community. And out of that, there's only 4 kids in high school. And I was the only senior this year.
David?
My father would have been very proud of me if I'd gone to that school. What is the name of the school?
Herman High School.
Polly?
How do you get your diploma when you're the only one?
We had a very small commencement with just the families, and one of my math teacher handed it out to me.
I thought it was a vending machine or something. Ron?
As valedictorian of your class, how were your grades?
They were average, I guess, around on a 4-point scale, around a 2.9, 3.0.
Okay. Now, you've heard the cross-examination, Betty. Is Paul, in your opinion, the sewing champion, or is he the only graduate in his class?
I think he's the sewing champion. Nobody would cook up a story like that.
You're right. You win $500. Paul, what's your true story?
To tell the truth, I am the sewing champ.
Ah, there you go. You got it. Congratulations, Betty. You won $500. Come out here and show us the suit there, Paul. Betty's absolutely delighted. And Betty, not only that, but you get to keep the suit. No, I'm sorry, Paul. No, you keep that. Now, isn't that a wonderful suit? You made that yourself? How long did it take you?
It took me 2.5 weeks on the jacket and 2 days on the pants.
Excellent. Well, look out, Giorgio Armani. Paul's coming. Ladies and gentlemen, congratulate him. We'll be back right after these words. Well, panel, can you show us the back of this dress? Look at that. That's it for this edition of The Tell the Truth. I will see you again next time. I'll get you.
GSN is booking you on an exotic getaway with the Amazing Race. 5 nights a week. Let GSN be your ultimate tour guide. The Amazing Race. Tonight at 9, only on GSN.